Hit the ground running with a very interesting talk from Mr. Frank Oestergaard from IBM. Before we commence, I would just like to remind you that we have to keep our phones on silent, and we will hopefully be able to ask a few questions after each lecture. It so happens that we have to synchronize our program here with the other programs in the house, so we don't have the luxury of running past the time, so we have to be very strict on having 30 minutes for each lecturer, including the questions. Now, Mr. Oestergaard will speak to us about reinventing the customer experience for growth. And he's been a thought leader in the software and IT space for almost 3 decades. He's leading IBM Commerce Unit in the Nordics. And he's been at the frontier of the digital transformation at IBM and for its customers for a very long time. And he joined IBM in 1999 and has very good credentials from wherever. I even tried to find something negative about him, couldn't find it, but I would happy deliver it if I had it. Sorry, I come up empty-handed. But please take the floor, Frank, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for spending the day this nice afternoon in Iceland. So I don't have a lot of time to explain a lot about myself, and so I will not spend time on the dirts, but there is some, I can promise you. So I'm going to speak very much about reinventing the customer experience for growth. And it's a very tough topic to cover in 30 minutes, so you have to fasten your seatbelts and follow me. I'll try and use some very simple way of communicating this topic to you. So I hope that you really find this inspiring, and of course we are willing to follow up. I also want to emphasize that the reason why I'm here is actually by invitation for leyfi, you could say, who's our strategic partner here in Iceland, and we work together with them to create a lot of these new customer experiences. So if there's any interest, I'm happy to come back to Iceland. I'm not scared away. It's been a while since I've been here, I think 4 or 5 years ago, so very happy to come back on that. So let's start on this journey. IBM has a strategy which is built on 3, you could say, legs. One is data and dealing with the exploding amount of data, but also the point that we don't have time to store data and spend a lot of time analyzing it, because we all expect to have experiences created, you could say, instantly in real time or near real time. So you see something around that. The other element of our strategy is really about cloud, which is really about new deliverables and cloud services. And the third thing, which will be a very hot topic of what I'm going to talk about today, is really the engagement, which is really how we interact, both in business and as persons, right? And underlying on that whole strategy, we have the security that we are working on. So that's kind of what I'm going. The interesting thing here is when these 3 dynamics comes together, the data-driven engagement, and the way of the cloud, which enable us to really scale the businesses, you create something which is very radical and really transform a lot of businesses and actually open up for a lot of new possibilities in the way we do business today. So what I'm going to talk about is the market shift and our belief. And I will talk about 3 strategies. There's actually 4 that you will see in the end of the video, but I will skip that, which is really around the social collaboration. And then I will talk about how we innovate to execute. So that's kind of the things I'll be covering in my presentation. IBM has, a part of our organization has something called Institute for Business Value. That Institute for Business Value go out and do, it's our research part, looking into business and see what is happening. And we have been doing that for many years, since 2004. And what we are seeing here is a very drastic change. We are going out talking to CEO, CMOs, CIOs, all the business leaders in the organization, trying to understand this. And what we're seeing is that there's a very rapid development into what you could call the customer-activated enterprise. And that's some of the things I was seeing. So this is a big theme across all the studies, and we have constantly seen that driving, you could say, through these institutes. So if we look at the strategies in business and the business model, you could say there's different part of the business that is really driving this. Of course, the C-suite, the board of directors, corporate strategy functions. But there's a very prominent, actually second place in this place, which is really changing this, which is the voice of the customers, right? And the way and that's coming back to creating that interaction with the customer. This is a profound change that we are seeing through that history of some of this research. And you can actually go and download, by the way, a lot of this research material. There's a lot of that is industry specific or domain specific, for marketing or some of the other stuff. And you can take an app from Android or from Apple Store where you actually download you could search for something called IBV. If you look at this, customers, us, right? We expect to be treated personal, right? If you go out and talk to the businesses, only 32 actually claim that they are able to deliver, you could say, an individual treatment of their customers and engage with them, right? But what may be even more interesting is that 80% of the CEO of the companies think that they deliver excellent services to us. But the fact is, only 8% of us actually agree with that, right? So there's a huge gap about what the corporates and the businesses actually believe and delivering that superior services, right? The other thing is, if you look at that market shift and what is driving this, basically 1/3 do not have a digital strategy, 1/3 has an integrated digital physical strategy, and 1/3 has a limited digital strategy. If you dig into these numbers, one of the very interesting finding is that only 15% of these customers who has either a limited digital strategy or an integrated digital strategy, 15% of them actually believe they have people in their organization who can actually transform their business. So there's a big challenge out there to really deal with this and the skills around this and creating that digital experience both in the digital and the physical world. The world of B2B and B2C, and I do this myself, we often talk about that, is changing. It's dead, right? It's really about how we deal people to people, human to human. One-to-one relationship is the new theme, and the point is that experience, and that experience that we are creating, is the new competitive battleground. So that basically means, instantly when we have that, we will judge that company that we're interacting with, whether it's positive, negative, or so, right? So basically, what we really need to ask ourselves as corporation is, do we really treat our customers as? Do we know them? Do we connect with them? And do we make it easy to do business with us? One way, and which I find very interesting, is our global leader for our interactive, who really deal with this customer experience. He has an expression where he says, the last best experience that anyone has anywhere becomes the minimum expectation for their future, you could say, interaction and what they expect, you could say, forward, right? So think about this. When you really experience something, whether it's in a consumer situation where you're a private person or in the world where you are B2B professional, when you experience something in your private world, you expect to have the same experience in your professional world, right? We are human, and we expect that. So, the other thing is that this is not really around singular channels, right? When we interact with our customers, we deal with them across a lot of channels, right? Whether it's a physical store or a digital, you could say, interaction point, or whether it's on mobile, right? Data should try to drive that experience and make that consistent across this, and the experience should really transcend that, all the channels, right? So design matters, experience matters, and moments matters in this way. So the importance of design, which has been a very focused thing, needs to look nice and so on, is very interesting. You all know this guy, one of our strategic partners from IBM, and it's not really about how it looks. Of course, that is important, but how does it work? I've never read, you could say, a manual about how my iPad works. I basically unplug it and it's just working, right? So that experience and design is really on how it works. So this is not a user experience. This is a user experience. So creating these moments that really makes us feel very comfortable and actually have that wow effect. One of the new things is to do that in context. So a lot of us are very active on a lot of different channels. We express things on, you could say, social medias, we tweet, we're on Facebook, on any other kind of social media, where we interact with customers. How do we really, you could say, build a foundation which allows us to put that customer in context and interact with them based on that? That's one of the key things going forward, and secure that we deliver that engagement, you could say. So let me talk about 3 strategies for reinvention of these, you could say, customer experiences. The first one is really experiences driven by data. Driving that with data. So on the data side, we all have a lot of typical transaction system, or what we often call systems of records, which tell us about, some data around our customers, CM systems, they have this title, they live here, they are male or female, we have transaction data and so on. But it doesn't really matter so much that Frank here is the VP of sales. What could potentially be much more value for me as a business is to understand what has Frank done the last week, what kind of behavior have he, what kind of you could say blogs have he read, what kind of white paper have I looked at, which will tell a lot more my interest. So the new thing around creating that understanding of the customer is really around behavioral data and the interaction data, and constantly developing that profile and understand my attitude, my feelings around that, and put that into, you could say, a context around me as a person. So in IBM, we are working on this model where we really put that person into model. We are using these data. We have a strategic relationship. You may have seen that with Twitter, but we can use a lot of other social channels where we can create that profile about that person and understand, what are the things they're looking for, what are the values, hence how should we potentially communicate with them, and what channels are they using, to communicate, so we can understand when is it relevant for us to deal with this. And this is a constant process for us to learn how to create these experiences. The second strategy for reinventing this is extend these digital, you could say, capabilities into the physical world. Right. So I'm going to give you a kind of a video, show you a video about this. It's a little long, but it gives you a very good perspective of how you can really take this to a very comfortable, very personal experience.
One, two, three, four, get my shoes and out the door. I'm alive, 6, 7, 8, feeling great. I'm gonna shine, life's good. I'm doing fine. I'm gonna do it right, do it again. Yeah. I look into the sky with all the beautiful color. But it's more than just for me, so gonna share it with another. I got to show, to give, let out. I want to sing and shout. Take a look and see a beautiful morning that turns into a beautiful evening. And if you ever make a beautiful life, and if you wanna sing, then come along with me. That's right. And if you wanna do tomorrow, it's very simple, gotta find the way to follow. And if you do, you have a future real bright. And it's a combination of consistency. Come on, say oh, oh, oh.
got the idea. I'm very scared of this scenario because it's going to be very expensive as a man, I think. But anyway, the third one is using digital to enhance personal engagement. And I'm going to take you through as a case that IBM have worked on. I guess many of you have seen the Wimbledon final on TV. IBM have been working with the Wimbledon team for many, many years, sponsoring that event. And one of the recent things we have done is really taking the concept around this tennis, which can really be seen for very few people on the stadium, and of course it's transmitted, but really taking that to the next level of making that digital experience available and interaction with the, you could say, the big event wherever and whenever, basically. So we have created personalized mobile fan experiences, on the mobile, so you can follow the event. We have analyzed for 8 years back, the different players, how they played against each other and so on. So while you are seeing the match, you could say in the TV, you can have a second screen who will give you access to all these data, and you can see how the play potentially can turn out between the two players and have social engagement as an integrated part of this. We have made a connection between the people who are at the, you could say, the play, physical, seeing the match, you could say physical, and the people who are remote. So you have here the Hill says and the World says. So you're kind of having an interaction between this, really activating the people who cannot be there, you could say physically, and connecting that, and to really drive that social engagement and interaction with the fans. We have created a social command center which allow them, you could say, the Wimbledon to really listening, understanding, and deepening that interaction, right? So let's have a look at that. So another very good example of this strategy around this. So I've covered really how you really drive these experiences through data, how you really connect it into the physical world, the example of the mother care store, and then how you use the digital you really to drive that personal engagement as an example in the Wimbledon summary, right? So let's talk a little bit, how do we do this? One of the elements of this is really deepening the brand relationship. Today we can take quite deep analytics and really drive that, understand customers, and drive that brand relationship through the life cycle. Really from unknown customers to become loyal, advocate, you could say, to the businesses. That's one element of this, and building that trust and consistency. That can only be done if you do this by creating some value, and we can have a lot of discussion about how do we do that. creating that satisfaction, and then create trust. And you only do that by interacting with the individual in a consistent way. The other part of this is really to deal with the operational excellence beneath this. So when we commit to do something for this individual, whether it's shipping an order or something else, we need to secure that we actually can, you could say, optimize that and we can deliver. So we have the analysis capabilities to really understand this and then do the planning and execution, which again will drive that brand experience. So there's two levels of this. What is happening right now, and I know this is a very busy slide, but I actually try to make it a little more readable. But it's really describing the next way of what is happening within commerce and the customer experiences. So we are really seeing, you could say, a totally new way of dealing with these customer experiences, driven by cognitive computing, driven by really omni-channel experiences, and really using all kind of devices, wearables, Internet of Things, mobiles and all that, and allowing that to be an integrated part of our experiences. Happy to discuss that a little more. So let's summarize what I talked about here. So that was more or less all I wanted to cover. One point here is, you may believe this is always or only for big companies. The good news is, especially the cloud capabilities, but also the way we do this is for very small companies really driving this. That's a key point I want to leave you. So thank you, and I hope I spelled this right on Icelandic.
Thank you very much, Frank. We have space for one question, if there is anything that is burning here. Let me just throw one thing in. You said this is for the small companies as well. Just thinking the market of one for the big electricity company and the market of one for the little grocery shop on the corner. Can you just elaborate a little bit on how that would work?
Yeah, so definitely. You could say the one I mentioned around the cloud is a fundamental change, because these capabilities, we have now a way of delivering, you could say, using the cloud out of the sky. So basically, as an example, if you look at that, creating that, we have a solution today where basically the qualifying is that you have one marketing person sitting in the organization driving that experience, right? And that's all you need. And we have a full service platform to do that. We have an example, and this is the best I can give you. A very small company in Copenhagen area, a fashion company called Ganni Fashion. Very small, 8 stores, who's using these capabilities. Of course, there's also big ones and good examples, but I really want to stress out that this is actually, because of the way we actually deliver these as a platform, is actually changing this, and you can actually start and really be disruptive to the business model as a very small company using these capabilities. Okay.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you.
And we'll take a few minutes break so people can change venues, and we'll commence again in a few minutes. Thanks.